Welcome to the Real Estate Guys radio program. I'm your host, Robert Helms. Real estate is changing, and it's changing in ways you might not be thinking about. Today, we're going to talk about disruption and disruptive technologies as they apply to the real estate business and your future on the Real Estate Guys radio program.
If you love real estate and have always wanted to own your own business, listen up. The Real Estate Guys and their panel of experts want to teach you how to go full-time fast in the real estate syndication business. These next few years may go down in history as one of the best times ever to acquire investment real estate. There are deals everywhere if you know where to look and how to assemble the resources. The Secrets of Successful Syndication seminar will show you how to make big money doing big deals from a team of experts that have syndicated projects totaling more than $1 billion. Don't wait for someone to give you a raise or create a job for you. Attend the Secrets of Successful Syndication and learn how to build a team, raise capital, find deals, and make full-time money in 6 months or less. Go to realestateguysradio.com and click on events. All the big players use syndication as a way to diversify risk, optimize profits, and earn big money. You can too. Go to realestateguysradio.com and click on events.
Welcome to the Real Estate Guys radio show. I'm your host, Robert Helms. With me, as usual, co-host financial strategist Russell Gray.
Hey, Robert.
We're always looking at what's happening in real estate. Last week, in fact, we did Clues in the News, which we love to do from time to time as we're seeing what the headlines are saying. And what we're going to talk about today is pretty interesting stuff. We are going to talk about disruption. And real estate hasn't changed much in a long time, and yet we're starting to see some things change. Disruption in general. Think about the way that the mail got disrupted by email.
Right.
A lot less things people have to send in the mail because of email, or the way that the horse and buggy business got disrupted by cars, right? When something changes, probably the biggest disruption technology people talk about is Uber and Lyft, putting the taxi cab business in a very different light because now anybody can drive anybody, and it's a great way to go for the consumer, for the driver, for a lot of folks. But anytime you disrupt something, you're moving dollars from one person to another, and that isn't always a good thing. So we want to think through some of these things. We've got 9 different categories. I hope we get to them all. Maybe there's more than that, but ways that the real estate business and the real estate investing world is changing.
Yeah, the society is changing for a lot of different reasons. I mean, there's lots of factors. We talk a lot about the economic factors. There's certainly demographic factors, but technology is changing faster than anything, and it's enabling buyers and sellers to connect and us to communicate, people to share ideas in ways that haven't really been anticipated. And then you've got these just genius people who figure out ways to solve problems with technology. So I don't know everything you have on your list, Robert, but I think about things like driverless cars. That was literally unthinkable. But imagine an environment where you didn't need to own a car because all you did was just step out and use your app and call up a car, and it came and picked you up and took you wherever you wanted to go. Would that change? How many of us use this garage anyway? Most of us use our garage for a storage shed. So
Why are you looking at me?
I guess it's not as disruptive as I thought.
Hey, I have cars in my garage now.
Yeah, but anyway, so you think about, for example, if trucks could drive themselves, then truck stops. What happens to the truck stop business? Well, I think they'll probably still be there, but they'll be for the maintenance of the trucks, not the maintenance of the drivers, because there won't be any drivers. So it'll change the business. The hotel business that's built up around truck stops might not be there because people won't need to sleep. Well, maybe the mechanics will. You see what I'm saying? I mean, it just changes things. So these are the things we're trying to get our mind around. These are trends that will evolve slowly. The advantage of them evolving slowly, hopefully, is that you'll have a chance to react. The disadvantage of them moving slowly is that you might miss them.
Right. So let's talk about the big disruption in real estate, obviously Airbnb, right? We've looked at the way that a lot of folks, our listeners, a lot of people we know are doing short-term vacation rentals where they either rent out a room in their home, pretty common, or using things like VRBO and HomeAway, related businesses, by the way, to Airbnb, that I've got a condo I buy, and rather than just rent it month to month, I can rent it by the night and make better return. I have to provide a little different level of service and so forth. So that is a disruption to a couple of things. First of all, the hotel business, right? If I'm going to, instead of staying in a hotel, I'm going to sleep on somebody's couch, which is how Airbnb started. But now it's things like extra bedrooms. We talked last week about one of our listeners who's got a big guest house with lots of rooms, and they rent them out on Airbnb. So that's a big disruption, a change in the way that people are choosing to stay. I know when I go into a market with my family, we'd rather have a house with a kitchen and those kinds of things to stay than just a hotel room. And so I think it's doing a couple of things, obviously creating some opportunity in real real estate investing, and we won't dwell on that because we've covered that topic in the past. But it also is shifting the way that people like the hospitality developers think.
No, absolutely. I mean, and they don't, a lot of them don't like it, for obvious reasons. And some people have taken the whole concept of Airbnb and the sharing economy, where I've got something and I don't use it to full capacity, so I'm going to rent out my excess capacity. And they're taking it all the way to a business model where I'm just going to buy a house and I'm just going to rent out the rooms. I'm never going to live in it.
Right.
It's not even for me. It's not excess capacity. I just see the opportunity to have very effective marketing and create higher revenue than a month-to-month, 6-month or 1-year rental program. I can just get in there and just do nightly rentals. And that's always been the purview of the hospitality and hotel business. Hospitality and hotel business has to respond. Last week we were in Bozeman, Montana. We were in Homewood Suites, right? So we were in there and we had a little refrigerator and a little dishwasher and a sink and they're designed. Some hotels have designed to do that. When it's because, Bozeman is largely a tourist town. And so people would come in and they're coming in with their family and they're going to stay.
Yep.
And there's other hotels that are really designed for the business traveler. So Wi-Fi has become a requirement almost everywhere in hospitality because people are working on the road or working on the move where that didn't used to happen. So there's a lot of this kind of stuff happening. And Airbnb is certainly on the forefront in residential and hospitality in terms of disrupting the norms of how both of those types of properties were rented out.
Right. So as we go through these, your mission is just think about what that means to you. As a consumer, it might give you more choice, but is there an opportunity there? And again, we've had folks on the show talk about that. In fact, there's kind of a subset of this article that we had on Clues to the News a few months back that you found about a group doing this for student housing. Same thing, putting a bunch of students together in a place so that they could be near a university and so forth. So lots of ways to disrupt this. Number 2 I have is worker housing. This is interesting, and this is happening in a lot of places. We're going to talk about an article in a minute that is a big example of it. But in many markets that are expensive, we saw this happen up in Cape Cod. We've seen this happen in Vail, Colorado. We've seen this happen in San Francisco. In fact, we're going to talk about a story in a minute where in order to attract labor, I've got to be able to find them housing. If I'm going to work in the Starbucks that is at in the financial district in San Francisco, I need to have a place to live. And yet what are rents like in San Francisco? The guy or gal that works at Starbucks isn't going to be able to afford an apartment, certainly not on their own. So the trend here is what we call worker housing, where developers are building properties specifically for workers, usually not for the company that employs the workers. So an article that came out on June 15th on The Verge says that Google is trying to solve employee housing crisis with modular apartments. The article says that Google's employees can't find affordable housing in Silicon Valley, so the company is investing in modular homes that'll serve as short-term housing for them. Apparently, the Google has ordered 300 units from a startup company called Factory OS, which specializes in modular homes. Now, we'll talk about that in a minute because that's another trend, modular homes. But this is an interesting situation for a company like Google. They want to hire new people and they got to hire entry-level people. And Google has all kinds of benefits and things and people are attracted to work there, but they're not being paid enough money to afford the typical apartment or home in the Bay Area.
Yeah, several months ago, there was a story in the news about the Google engineer who basically rented a box van and slept in the parking lot and used the shower facilities and restaurant facilities and basically lived in the parking lot of Google. And here's a guy's probably making a couple $100,000 a year at his job, but the housing prices are just so ridiculous and the taxes are so ridiculous out there that it's very difficult to live even on that kind of income. So this is a trend, if you will. It's not a disruptive technology, it's a disruptive economy. And it's what you have is when you have through a highly dense area, like what happens in New York, you have these transitions, the Bay Area. I grew up in the Bay Area. You grew up in the Bay Area. So we know the Bay Area very well. I used to trudge through orchards on my way to school.
You and me both.
Very, very affordable. But what happened is the economy just took off. And so it attracted all kinds of capital, all kinds of people. And pretty soon everything got developed. And because of the natural geographic barriers, there was no way to expand outward any longer. And so now we're talking about density. Well, you're not going to go high rise probably in a place like Silicon Valley because it's earthquake country. So you've got to figure out a different way. So you've got to drive a lot of costs out of the building, which we're going to talk about in a moment. And then you've got to find a way to create some density. And so here is Google, who's a technology company, having to put their capital and their firepower, their mental energies into figuring out how to solve a housing crisis just so they can work. Well, this can create a different trend. And the trend is Google may be asking themselves, okay, I'm going to solve this problem temporarily, but I can't solve it long term. How do I solve it long term? I have to move. Right. I got to move my company. I got to move my company someplace. And this is something that if I'm Silicon Valley, I'm thinking about. It's like, what am I going to do to keep these employers here? They can't solve the housing crisis either. And so that brings up to this whole other thing, because as you see areas like this, and then again, I know that area well. And you come in and you say, hey, we're going to put in high density housing. And somebody says, well, I'm over here in my fancy little ranch house. I don't want to be next to some high density housing. I'm going to push back on that.
Yep.
And so there's going to be a lot of dynamics going on. And I think the big picture is we're not here to draw any conclusions necessarily. We're just drawing your attention to it so that you can begin to look around what's going on in the markets you're in and ask yourself, do any of these apply? And then number two is when these problems, because that's what they are, they're problems. When these problems manifest, the flip side is going to be an opportunity. Where is the opportunity going to be? And you have to look at each individual situation. Like tiny houses is another example. Maybe if they could find a plot of land and they could get zoned it to do tiny houses, maybe it's not density, but that would be something else. I mean, I'd rather live in a tiny house than a box van.
Well, you and I were looking at a video just the other day about this, about how more tiny houses can fit on dear land. When there's not a lot of land, you can put these tiny houses. Not everyone wants to live in a 120 square foot house, but lots of people would, compared to having to drive an hour to work.
Well, the irony is that was solving a problem, at least the way the video was showing. It was demonstrating solve a problem on the other end of the food chain. It was down at the bottom, the homeless people. Get the people off the street and give them low income housing. Give them something they can afford to live in and own, instead of just having them in these C-class apartments. And what happens in those environments, and we've been C-class landlords, and we know how difficult it can be, but give these people a place where they can have the dignity of home ownership, the pride of home ownership, the opportunity of home ownership, but in a tiny home to get them on the lower end of the rung and get them started. On the flip side, we've got this Google situation where these are highly paid people, and yet they still have the same problem.
Yep.
I mean, it's so funny. We go, we look at society and go, that's their problem. Yeah, it's our problem as a society. It's our problem. Google's stepping up and they're doing something. The folks behind this tiny home movement are stepping up and doing something. I think there's a role for all of us as individual real estate investors to get involved and find ways to solve this problem.
That's the disruption part. The disruption part is this. Most employers rely on third parties, developers, landlords, investors to provide the housing. This is such an extreme case where even though the market demand is there, clearly, no one's stepping up. So Google has to step up because it's in their enlightened self-interest to make sure that their workers are happy. I mean, already they have Google vans that bus people to work so they don't have to drive or ride their bicycles or take public transportation. They have their own network of that. So they're already looking for those solutions. This is a real estate solution. And the other trend that this is, a disruptive technology is specifically it's modular construction. So modular construction disrupts what? The traditional building industry.
Right.
So development and building, stick built and concrete built, and those things are being disrupted by modular construction.
You know what I think is so interesting about this, Robert, is the Google situation is very familiar with another development project we're very familiar with that has similar problems.
Exactly.
And similar solutions. You need housing, affordable housing, high density housing in order to house workers who can't afford to live where they work. And at the same time, you've got the modular thing, which was not, in this case that I'm referring to, it's not solving the problem for the workers as much as it's actually the project itself is taking advantage of the low end, and it solved a different problem. How do you build a high quality hotel room, if you will, at a low price, a low enough price so that the rents make sense? And so the point is the technology of being able to manufacture in this way and produce a high quality product, because when we think of modular, we think low quality. But that's not necessarily the case anymore.
It's quite the opposite. Here's the argument for modular. It's this. A house that gets built out in the elements, and one day it's raining, and one day it's snowing, and one day it's so hot that the wood is cracking, has a certain result. A property that's built in a completely controlled indoor environment, which most modular properties are built in, is much more consistent. So it's amazing today what's happened. Modular homes aren't trailer parks anymore. Modular homes are, you'd be hard pressed to know when you're in one. Some of them are absolutely beautiful, and you wouldn't know unless you really were paying attention that it was built in a factory instead of in the location where you found it. So that is another big trend. And from a technology side, modular construction has increased its efficiency and its quality and its ease so much in just the last few years. It's amazing.
I mean, it's the Henry Ford model, if you think about it. You know, when the automobile first was invented, or it really started to become popular, Henry Ford would, these craftsmen would build these things one at a time. Henry Ford said, that's not really efficient. Let's go to an assembly line. And that's basically what modular homes does. The other thing is when you look at conventional homes, you mentioned weather, you have issues where the project has to sit idle because of weather and can't get built. And the cost of that idle, that hold time, is built into the sales price. And so when you can pull out these wasteful charges, and this goes back to this idea of sharing economy, this technology of all different types is bringing hyper efficiency. If empty hotel rooms through consolidators, like whoever, that they fill, Priceline.com, right? They take the excess inventory. Uber, letting people put their cars to use when they would normally just be sitting garaged, or Airbnb putting bedrooms to use when they would normally not be in use. This is just a lot of efficiency finding its way. Modular technology, modular construction technology, a company like Google, innovative company, seeing it, taking advantage of it to solve a problem. There's a lot of this kind of stuff that's going to be going on all around us. And it's going to be fascinating to look at it and figure out, how can we get in? How do we fit in? Where can we play? And how is it going to both affect us, both from the opportunity standpoint and both also from the competition standpoint, like the hotel industry and taxi industry is experiencing?
We're talking about disruptions in the real estate industry and market. We'll have more when we come back. You're tuned to the Real Estate Guys radio program. I'm your host, Robert Helms.
Need help with your real estate investment portfolio? Check out the resources page at realestateguysradio.com.
This portion of the Real Estate Guys radio program is brought to you by International Coffee Farms, where you can own a parcel of land in your very own specialty coffee farm in Panama for as little as $15,000. Here's how it works. Deeded half-acre parcels entitled Specialty Coffee Farms in Boquete, Panama are turnkey managed professionally on your behalf by a team of local experts. Sustainable average income is estimated at 12%, and cash flow can begin within 12 to 15 months from the date of your parcel ownership. International Coffee Farms' mission is to own and operate specialty coffee farms that are economically, environmentally, and socially sustainable. As part of this mission, 20% of the gross profits of each farm is committed to a socially sustainable fund to improve the lives of the Panamanian coffee farm workers and their families. International Coffee Farms currently owns and operates 9 specialty coffee farms with half-acre parcels available for immediate ownership. To find out how you can become a coffee farm owner in Boquete, Panama, email coffee@realestateguysradio.com. That's coffee@realestateguysradio.com. Are you ready to profit in paradise? Hi, it's Robert Helms, and if you think real estate investing means tenants, toilets, and termites, think again. Located just a short plane ride from the U.S., a virtually untouched paradise awaits, the beautiful country of Belize. When you go to Belize with the Real Estate Guys, you'll spend 4 fabulous days discovering one of the most intriguing real estate markets I've ever seen. With its jungle rainforests, pristine beaches, and 81-degree turquoise water, Belize is one of the most beautiful places on earth. Plus, it's considered one of the top 7 tax havens in the world. Belize property is on the rise, and many experts think the best is yet to come. But don't just take my word for it. Come experience Belize firsthand at our upcoming investor field trip. When you join us, you'll discover the many reasons we love Belize, like tremendously undervalued beachfront land, super low taxes, ease of doing business, and so much more. Get the details at realestateguysradio.com. Just click on events. See paradise for yourself. Click events at realestateguysradio.com, and I'll see you in beautiful Belize.
Hi, this is Garrett Sutton, Rich Dad's advisor. Remember, equity happens, and you're listening to The Real Estate Guys.
Welcome back to the Real Estate Guys radio program. Thanks for tuning into the show. If you want to sharpen your sales techniques, it's coming in November. Our once-a-year class on how to win funds and influence people. It's an amazing 2-day sales workshop that Russ puts on, and you're going to dig it. We'll have the details up shortly. Save the date. It's the first weekend in November in beautiful Dallas, Texas. We're talking today about disruption in real estate. The industry that we're in is kind of an old industry that hasn't changed a whole lot. There's lots of parts of the real estate industry. We're going to transition now and talk about technology tools for home buyers. And that can include, obviously, investors. So the way that people buy property has changed. It used to be that when I got it started in real estate, every Friday, the MLS book came out. And in that book, printed book that arrived on our doorstep Friday morning, were all the new listings. And it came out just in time for the weekend shoppers. And the only way you had access to those listings was to hire a real estate professional. I remember that when they started talking about putting listings online, many realtors thought it was the death of the real estate professional.
And for some it was. Those that didn't adjust and that was the only value they brought to the party, they're gone. They got cleaned out. That's Darwin's law of business.
But I'll tell you what's happened instead is that while there are fewer realtors that are doing more of the business, it is such a great tool. And I think the level of practice is much higher than it was because people now have access to this. And so for years, you've been able to shop online for homes. But there's a couple of things that are changing. In fact, an article came out last week in the Wall Street Journal that said buying a home sight unseen is easier than ever and more common. The article says it takes a confident buyer to purchase a house without stepping foot in it, but advances in virtual reality and other technology have taken away some of the surprises. So for many years, we've been able to do these walkthroughs of the home. And there's third-party companies to do that, and there's realtors to do that. There's 360-degree views of properties. You can go and see every room and so forth. And so today, we're seeing a lot of people able to buy without physically seeing the home. Now, for most of us, if we're going to move, up in our neighborhood, we're going to go see the house. But imagine you get relocated overseas. Are you going to make a trip to go see the house and all that? Well, most people would, but today you don't necessarily have to.
Yeah, I mean, how often do you actually go visit a hotel room that you're going to stay in? You look at the picture online, you go, it looks pretty good, I'll do that. So it's not unusual for people to do that. It's just the level of commitment. Am I going to spend the rest of my life in this house? But the technology is so good, and the virtual reality, I mean, they can literally stage the house virtually in these walkthroughs. So you can see the physical house through video if someone's gone through and shot the video, and then you can see it virtually staged if you want to do that. So there's a lot of this different type of thing. I bought my first rental property, which was a house that I turned into a rental property, but I bought it sight unseen, and I didn't literally sight unseen. I did not see it. I didn't see inside pictures. It was just the market was so hot. Here today, you don't even in a hot market, you don't have to go through that because you do have this ability to see what you're buying without having to actually be physically in the room. So that's very cool.
Absolutely. And the technology and is changing a lot. And this isn't really about technology as much as disruption, but there's certainly ways that we're able to use technology in the real estate industry. But for buyers especially, they can do things like check out the comps in an area.
Right.
So for quite a while, sites like Zillow have been able to show you the values in the area. But frankly, as someone in real estate, and this is probably true in your neighborhood, they haven't been all that great, though you haven't been able to rely on the information. But you know what? Their algorithms are getting better. Technology is getting better for that. You can look up things online like crime rates and school statistics and all those things, which make it a lot easier as a home buyer. And again, many tenants can use these same tools. And that's how you have to start thinking about how this might relate to you as a landlord.
Well, yeah, I mean, we had Kenny, McElroy talking about how he has used technology to change the way he markets his units. And he goes out and through social media creates a lot of interest and awareness. And it's more about lifestyle than just showing your wares. And then when someone is thinking about renting an apartment, rather than them having to take time off work and book an appointment to come over, they can do the virtual tour using these types of technologies. And so, again, we're driving costs out of the marketing. We're driving costs and time out of the acquisition. And so if you are implementing these strategies as a landlord, you begin to get competitive edges. Kenny took millions of dollars of marketing money out of his expense column and put it on his bottom line by using technology. Your number may not be as big, but if you take advantage of some of these things compared to your competition, if and when we get to a tight market, you're going to be able to bring your number down a little bit to meet the market where they need to be to rent, and your competition's not going to be able to do that without going underwater. So these are things you want to be thinking about when the sun is still shining, and just in case we're sailing into a softer economy.
Yeah, good point. And today's show's not designed to give you the top 100 apps out there that you can figure that out on your own. But what we are seeing is that more buyers are able to do a great majority of their early work, especially online. And there's more tools that the realtors have as well. And of course, as an investor, we're seeing a lot of tools for investor, property analysis, all those kinds of things. So we always want to take a look towards technology. Another big disruption, though, is crowdfunding. Now, we've talked about crowdfunding. We've been to crowdfunding conferences. It's still in its infancy. We spent a little time talking about crowdfunding at our Secrets of Successful Syndication because as far as folks who are raising money, it's a way to raise money to get property, but it really is changing a lot of the things happening when it comes to buying and financing real estate.
Well, I mean, it goes back to using technology to make markets. It's the same thing. I mean, I think the banking industry is going to get disrupted. It has to a large degree. Bitcoin's been in the news because people are able to save money and store money and conduct transactions without needing to use a bank. And so you look at crowdfunding is an opportunity where people can put a property out there or a need, whether it's peer-to-peer lending. I mean, there's all kinds of different ways, but it's market making. And the idea is, how can technology help you make a market where buyers and sellers can come together? It's like Amazon. Amazon was disruptive, still is disruptive. But at the very, very beginning, it was very, very disruptive because it gave peer review. It gave the opportunity for accountability. It was not just the purveyor of the product saying, hey, this is who I am and this is why I'm great. But it was, look, here's all these comments from these actual users.
Right.
And then even how good the comment is rated. Was this useful? Yes. Well, then the most useful ones pop up. Well, I mean, we take that for granted today. But it wasn't, I mean, when that first came out, it was like 10, 15 years ago, whatever it was revolutionary. And now you're seeing the impact of the disruption as they have aggregated more and more customers. It's disrupted the retail business and a lot of the things associated with the retail business. So it's important to stay focused. As I said, these trends sometimes we say disruptive, but it's not like a big explosion in the world change. It's these trends are coming, and it's easy to fall asleep and miss them. And it's a lot of fun to stay awake and watch them and then figure out how can you put yourself in position.
Well, let me give you a little example of that. So my youngest son loves drones and all things drones and has dozens of drones. Well, he had a gift certificate at a store and he wanted to go buy a drone, and we're standing in the retail store looking at boxes and boxes of drones. And I feel at a complete disadvantage because how he normally shops for drones is online. And I always say to him, look for 4 stars and above.
Yeah.
Because most of these little drones are terrible, crappy, they don't work, they write all these problems. Mm-hmm. And so your average drone has a rating of 2.5 stars because it's junk. And I tell him, hey, when you're looking for drones, make sure it's 4 stars and above. And he's learned that. Well, you're standing in there at the retail store looking at 25 different drones. How do you know? I find myself going online to see what the ratings are of the brands.
That's exactly how you know. And there's actually apps being made where you can scan barcodes and they pull things up and you can find that kind of stuff. So,
which that disruption is more of a visibility across all commerce, which is great. The whole peer-to-peer thing, we have it in lending in terms of actually making loans to people, and then we have it just in feedback like TripAdvisor. We talked about hospitality a little bit. You look at the types of places that you want to go stay. You wouldn't think of staying in a hotel without checking the TripAdvisor rating or what the folks on Yelp are saying.
Right.
But again, we take that for granted today. And so we're starting to see that for real estate professionals. People are rating their transactions from the mortgage side, from the real estate brokerage side, from the closing title company attorney side. So going in, hey, who do I want to work with?
Yeah. And so if you're running a property, for example, especially a multifamily property or something like that, you want to make sure that you're out there represented well. You want to make sure that you have a strategy for getting your tenants to give you great reviews, right? You don't want to be the guy that when you go to Yelp, they find out that either you're not there or you've got a 1-star or 2-star, and it may be only 1 or 2 disgruntled people. And you've got many happy tenants that have never bothered to do that because you've never asked them to.
Right.
So again, just being aware of how these things are affecting you. I mean, just the other day, we all went to lunch together. We were driving down the road. We saw a restaurant. Like, oh, let's pull in there. And you said, well, that one's 2.5 stars. Let's go up the road 1 more. That business, that restaurant lost our lunch business that day because you were in the back seat of the car on your app shopping to find out, because we were in a town we didn't know, what the star rating was when we went to the 4-star restaurant, and that's what we did. And it was great. But this is, I mean, if you're a landlord out there and you are marketing your property in a competitive market, again, we're talking about being prepared to be active and efficient in a competitive market. If right now the sun is shining, I'm not saying doom is coming, but I'm just saying that it's pretty good right now. It's been pretty good. And these are the times that you take advantage of these things and begin to make these moves so that you have competitive advantages when things get a little bit tighter. And I've said that before, but I'm going to continue to say it because it's a big part of the relevance of what we're bringing up today.
We're talking about disruption in the real estate world, and we got a lot more to talk about. And we're also going to give you a chance to win a prize as we play real estate trivia next. You're tuned to the Real Estate Guys radio program. I'm your host, Robert Helms.
Live nationwide. You're listening to The Real Estate Guys. Find out more at realestateguysradio.com.
For investors, timberland has become the symbol of safety. Global tropical timber demand continues to surge as the world's population increases. The need for managed, sustainable timber production forests has never been greater. When stock markets crash, trees keep growing. Direct ownership of fully managed tropical timberland acreage is now available to accredited investors. Prime valuable hardwood groves close to the beautiful Costa Rican border generate and maintain superior long-term wealth. Qualified, accredited investors should email timber@realestateguysradio.com for more information. Consider visiting our forest plantations to see for yourself. Email timber@realestateguysradio.com. This announcement does not constitute either an offer to sell securities or a solicitation of an offer to purchase. Offering made by prospectus only. For more information, email timber@realestateguysradio.com.
Forbes rated Memphis the best cash flow market in the nation. And our good friend Terry Kerr at Mid-South Home Buyers has been the premier turnkey rental property provider in Memphis for over 13 years. With an A+ rating from the Better Business Bureau, Terry has renovated over 750 houses. Real Estate Guys listeners have snapped up hundreds. Discover what these satisfied investors already know. Mid-South's properties are completely renovated with a 1-year warranty and a lifelong rental guarantee. They're affordable, well-managed, and easy to own. Perfect for beginning investors and veterans alike. Get in on the action. Contact Terry and his team via email at midsouth@realestateguysradio.com.
Hey, it's Ken McElroy. I listen to the Real Estate Guys, and so should you.
Welcome back to the Real Estate Guys radio program. Thanks for tuning into the show. We're talking today about disruption, ways that the real estate industry and rental real estate and finding deals and ownership and all that may be changing so you can stay prepared. I have a feeling there's more that we're going to be able to cover today, but right now we're going to take a break and play Real Estate Trivia. Your chance to win a prize by knowing today's Real Estate Trivia question, which will have something to do with real estate. And if you know the answer and can get it to us quickly, you can win a prize. Today's prize is a great book by Lisa Congdon called Whatever You Are, Be a Good One, an illustrated book of awesome quotes. That can be yours if you know today's Real Estate Trivia question. When you hear the question and think you want to take a guess at the answer, send us an email to trivia@realestateguysradio.com. Include your name and the answer to the question, plus your physical mailing address so we can send you this great book if you're the winner. Trivia@realestateguysradio.com. Last week on the Real Estate Guys, we were in Bozeman, Montana, and we asked, what is Montana's nickname? Lots of guesses. We made references to, of course, Big Sky and all that, but in reality, Montana's nickname is the Treasure State. Here's our real estate trivia question for this week. We were talking a minute ago about Amazon. Amazon was actually founded in Seattle, Washington over 20 years ago. On June 16th of this year, it was announced that Amazon.com would acquire Whole Foods Markets Incorporated. Here's our trivia question. Where is Whole Foods based? So Amazon's based in Seattle. Where is Whole Foods based? If you know, and you might, or you want to take a guess, send us your best guess to trivia@realestateguysradio.com. The first person with the right answer will get a copy of Whatever You Are, Be a Good One. Whole Foods CEO John Mackey will be in Las Vegas for Freedom Fest. Come on out and see the Real Estate Guys there as well. All the details on our website at realestateguysradio.com under events. Where is Whole Foods based? That's today's real estate trivia question. We're talking about disruption in real estate and lots of different ways that we're seeing, evolution and change in the real estate markets, in the way properties are marketed and sold, in the way that the landlords manage properties, all kinds of things. Next, let's talk about some of the new models out there. So we see new models for real estate brokerage. There was an article that came out a couple weeks ago about this company. I guess it's Really, it's REALI.
Really?
Really, an online brokerage, and it's 100% online. So we saw, businesses that came out. There were changes in real estate brokerage after years and years and years of it being the exact same business. There was a company called Keller Williams that came out, right? Gary Keller's company, and they had a different model for their agents. Then there were companies that were reduced fee brokerages where you didn't get the full service, but you didn't pay the full price. This is now a fully online real estate service in the Bay Area. Well, Bay Area has expensive properties, Northern California. And so they've just raised $5 million for expanding this brokerage. And I think we're going to see more of this and probably not less of it in the future.
Well, I understand both sides of the argument. If you're a real estate agent and you're selling a $100,000 house and you want to get a 6 to 8% commission because of the amount of work you have to do, that makes sense. If you're selling a $2 million house, that's a big check for that seller to write.
Right.
And you could say, yes, but it's a lot harder to sell the house. Is it 10 times harder?
Right.
And so what's going to happen is the marketplace is going to start looking for better solutions. And so, if you're out there in the real estate profession, you have to ask yourself, how am I going to meet that?
Right. You want to be able to figure out how to add the value, because we are very pro realtor. We're going to always say use a realtor. We're going to always use a professional, right? And there's a lot of folks out there, no, here's how you wiggle around, and here's how you cheat your real estate agent out of their commission. Forget all that. I mean, get a great realtor. They're worth their weight in gold. But at the same time, technology makes their job easier, makes it more efficient, and we are seeing an overall trend of commissions coming down.
Well, here's my point. If commissions are going to come down, and there's not a lot you can do about that, you have to do two things. One is you have to redefine your role, and number two is you have to find a way to do more transactions, and so that way you can maintain your income. And so, when you talked earlier about when the MLS, it came, and then all of a sudden you were no longer the purveyor of the inventory, right? Somebody else had access to the inventory. That was kind of step one in making the market. Now they're saying, okay, we can actually market the property and do some things. I mean, whatever it is that they're going to do for you with their service, right? It brings the cost down a little bit. So the role of the agent changes a little bit. Right now, maybe at some point artificial intelligence will handle negotiation, handle interviewing the client and really asking them questions about what they want and what they're looking for, and understanding, dealing with the emotions, you're almost like a therapist. You know better than me, because that's why I didn't go into the real estate side. If I wanted to be in the numbers side of it, where I could just show the people mathematically what made sense, I didn't want to get involved in the debate between the husband and wife about, what color the bathroom was or which way the window faced. Right? But the real estate agent is going to have to realize, as they're paying attention, just like every other industry is having to pay attention, as these different business models that are facilitated through the technologies emerge, how are you going to reposition yourself to maintain your value proposition? What you do will change and how you position yourself will change, but your income doesn't have to change as long as you adapt.
Right. And of course, what are you doing for the value too? I think there's a lot of physical value that you can add as a real estate professional because it's a physical asset. We've seen this trend already, and there's new models in the lending world. That went online pretty quickly, where it didn't matter whether my lender was face to face with me because the technology was just numbers and those kinds of things. They didn't have to go show them the house, right? So we're seeing big changes now when it comes to lending. We had Patch of Land at one of our syndication events, and what they do, they're kind of a crowdfunding platform for loans. Yep. So they allow individuals, they go out and actually make the loan. So they make the loan typically to investors. So it's an interesting model for sure, but they make a loan to an investor. And once the loan is made, they go back and rather than sell it in the secondary market to get their funds back, they go out and they crowdfund it. Yeah. They bring in people a few $1,000s at a time to replace that money, and they go out and do it again. So that is a different model than the traditional lender.
Yeah, they're market making for private mortgages to a degree. Wall Street and mortgage-backed securities were part of moving money from investors, and not the way we as real estate investors think. Right. We think it's the property. But when you're a debt investor, you're buying the mortgage, you're buying the stream of payments. And so Wall Street would go out and market to income investors mortgage-backed securities, and then that money would funnel through the mortgage banks and ultimately through brokers and make its way down to the street, right? But this model completely changes that. So it's another type of disruptive technology. Way back when I got in the mortgage business, that was when the first advent of the online mortgage application was coming. And everybody thought that was the end of the loan officer, because the perception was the value that the loan officer did was quote rates and fill out forms.
Right.
Well, I looked at that and I said, well, that's easy. I can reposition myself. I'm going to become a financial strategist. I'm going to show people how to strategically manage equity and cash flows and use arbitrage. And that was a game changer. I had people coming to me, and I was a new kid on the block, but I had brought a completely different way of thinking about the mortgage business because I hadn't been in it, and I didn't bother to go get trained in it by a traditional thing. I had a guy coaching me on the way the business worked, but when it came to the marketing and how I was going to position myself in the market, I completely reframed that. And because of that, I ended up having a thriving mortgage business and a practice that was very focused on working with investors.
Well, I would say that back in the day, that was a disruptive thing to do. That was a change in the way that you had your mortgage reps work with people, and all that was very, very different. And so we're going to continue to see businesses evolve and industries evolve. And so as a real estate investor, your mission is to be aware of it and be on the right side of it. Because again, when a disruption happens, somebody wins, somebody loses. Often you don't want to be on the losing side if you can avoid it. So if you are the lender, right, we met a couple weeks ago, several hard money lenders, right? And that's a great way to invest in a property and have it backed by a real asset, and typically at a low loan to value with high interest rates. And people think, well, why would you do that? Well, there's just 1,000 reasons why hard money makes sense from both sides. And having been on both sides of that transaction as a hard money lender, as a hard money borrower, love it, love it, love it. But it's taking business away from somebody else. Anything that's private funding. We talk about syndication a lot. There's a big change in models for investing and in real estate syndication, right? We had John from Promanis on the show a few months back, and what they're doing is completely different than the traditional syndication on a particular property by doing a fund that has lots of different properties involved. And so there's lots of ways to approach the business differently. And I would say, rather than just sit back and watch everybody else be creative, figure out how to do it yourself.
Yeah, that's why masterminds are so great. That's why putting yourself in environments where you're, sitting around talking about these things and then really brainstorming about what can we do, how can we do it, and then going out and seeing what other people are doing, attending trade shows and listening, reading trade magazines, and that's really important too. So yeah, obviously we're preaching to the choir, because if you've listened to the show this long, you're the type of person that's listening and looking for good ideas, and that's great. And you should continue to do that. And make sure that when you come up with a question or a good idea, send it to us. Use our feedback page at realestateguysradio.com, or if you want to ask a question for an Ask the Guys show, hit the Ask the Guys button and hit us up with a question, because we always like to know what you guys are thinking out there. We're blabbering on into the microphones, but we would like to really hear what you guys are thinking, what you're experiencing, what you're seeing, because the pace of change is fast, and it's, our ability to communicate with one another and come up with ideas and spark each other's imagination is a big part of being in this game, and it's a lot of fun.
The only thing constant is change. We're taking a look at change in the real estate world and disruption, and more we come back. You're tuned to the Real Estate Guys radio program. I'm your host, Robert Helms.
Real estate investment advice right in your mailbox. Sign up for the free Real Estate Guys newsletter at realestateguysradio.com.
Ranked by Forbes as one of the fastest growing cities, Orlando, Florida has a big and diverse economy, yet still features affordable rental properties that cash flow. Our boots on the ground turnkey provider Greg Bond at Greater Orlando Homebuyers can show you how to start generating cash flow today. He just wrote a special report to help you discover the magical market of Orlando. Request your free copy today. Send an email to orlando@realestateguysradio.com. That's orlando@realestateguysradio.com.
Hi, this is Patrick Donahoe, CEO of Paradigm Life. Wall Street and banks spend billions of dollars per year in advertising with the goal to convince you that they are the solution. But take a look around. None of their advice has worked. If you're listening to this, odds are pretty good that you're already a real estate investor, or at least becoming one. So why do you do it? Is it to hedge inflation, the tax benefits, or maybe it's to get your money away from Wall Street? It's because of these benefits and so many more that I created the Real Estate Investor's Guide to the Perpetual Wealth Strategy. When you combine successful real estate investing with the Perpetual Wealth Strategy, you have the recipe for what has helped the wealthy to establish their financial well-being for decades. You can download the Real Estate Investor's Guide to the Perpetual Wealth Strategy today by clicking the Resources tab on the Real Estate Guys Radio homepage. Don't wait, go download it now.
Hi, this is Steve Forbes. You're listening to The Real Estate Guys. Have fun. You'll learn something.
Welcome back to the Real Estate Guys radio program. Thanks so much for tuning into the show. Come on out and see the Real Estate Guys. If you go to our website at realestateguysradio.com and click on events, you'll see all the places we are, like Freedom Fest in July. We're going to be in hot Las Vegas in July, and this is an amazing conference with all kinds of different stuff going on. But we've definitely had a history of getting some great interviews and some great thoughts and some great ideas, and it's an incredible thing. Come out and see us there. Let's go have a beer. At the very least, we'll be recording a few shows there and bringing some of that show to you.
Well, so I'll give you an example. At Freedom Fest in 2010, Robert and I sat in a session, and a guy named Jeffrey Tucker got up there, and he was on a panel, and he was telling us all about this great new thing that we should be all very much involved in.
This disruptive thing
called Bitcoin.
Yeah, Bitcoin.
And it was 2010. And we sat there, and I think we wrote about this in our newsletter a few weeks ago, but we sat there looking at it and we thought, God, that just doesn't make any sense to me. It's not real. It's not backed by anything. It's not even legal tender laws. Could be shut down. I mean, blah, 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 blah. All right. So then we went to $100 lunch.
Yeah.
And we talked about how dumb it was.
Yeah.
Had we taken that $100 lunch and just put it in Bitcoin and said, I don't understand it, but what the heck? I'm just going, let's get
$100 of the Bitcoin.
$72 million today is what that'd be worth.
That was an expensive lunch.
That was an expensive lunch. So, but you know what? Just because we didn't take advantage of the idea doesn't mean that a great idea wasn't presented to us. And that's why we go. And so Freedom Fest is one of those places where you find out about those kind of things. We've met a lot of great people. Some of the people we've had on the show that people have gotten to know and have become part of our Real Estate Guys family, if you will. We met at Freedom Fest.
Yeah, we'll be there. And so anyway, you see all the details on the website. Come on out, and there's a explanation of the thing and all that. Anyway, let's continue our discussion about disruption. This is an interesting one. So we talked a little bit about worker housing and the opportunity, which whether or not it's the company itself that creates worker housing, what we're seeing now, we've got a friend doing a big equity raise right now on a unique situation that there's a need for worker housing. But there's another trend, which is that of the nomadic worker. So there are developers that are courting right now folks that can work anywhere.
I resemble that remark.
Yeah,
being
exactly.
a nomadic worker.
You're a nomadic worker, right? We pretty much haul around our microphones in a suitcase. People say, "Do you have a studio?" Well, yeah, but we don't use it very often because we're all traipsing around the world to get great information, right? A different town every week, it seems. But the idea that for a subset of people, not everybody, many people go to work in a building, but for more people than ever today, you can work wherever you want. Take Mauricio Arul, the attorney who's been on our show a lot. He's an attorney that we've used for many, many years. He's lived in 4 or 5 different places in different states and different countries in the last 7 years because he can work from anywhere. He's a syndication attorney. And so for him, as long as he's got a telephone and an internet connection, he's in business. So he lives where he wants to live and works wherever he is.
Where the numbers make sense.
Right, where the numbers make sense. So, but this is a disruptive trend in the point of view of real estate because now developers are starting to clue into the fact that they aren't just after the local person, right? And this is a developer is going to sell a property. Same thing for you as a landlord. Is there a way you can attract this kind of nomadic worker? What kinds of amenities do they need? What's important to them?
Well, they need an office. They need a workstation at home in addition to a bedroom space.
Bingo.
They need great Wi-Fi. They
Very
need reliable
high-speed
electricity, high-speed Wi-Fi. Absolutely. They need to have that.
Strong cell phone signal.
Strong cell phone signal. So they need that. And so those are things that you can take advantage of. The other thing is you can say, again, we mentioned Google earlier. And, Google is going to figure this out. They're going to figure it out. Everybody's going to figure it out. But areas that were formerly affordable because there was no demand, because there was no industry there, this is the whole point. People can move there. So if you can find areas that have great amenities, that have all the things that people want in a bedroom community, if you will, and the only thing that's keeping the price down is that there isn't great industry, and then you're paying attention to that Chamber of Commerce, and you're finding that Chamber of Commerce and the local industry is put a lot of effort into recruiting information workers or nomadic workers, you could end up having demand in an area you wouldn't expect it. And you can catch a little bit of a trend if you're aware. So, just from a market research and looking for a place where you might be able to catch a trend, you might consider the role of the nomadic worker in society and look for clues of other big players who are thinking the same way you are and creating those communities, because that's what it's going to come down to. We'll give you another example. These work share areas like
WeWork and Workspace and these places where you don't have a regular office necessarily, but you can go. I mean, for years there's been, the executive suites where you may not have a big enough business that you need a whole office, but you have a little shared cubicle, and then there's conference rooms and there's a kitchen and those kinds of things. Well, today there's these places that are sprouting up to deal with exactly what we're talking about, the nomadic worker. Many of these, right? You and I have a partner and she's all over the place, and she has a membership to one of these organizations where whatever town she's in, she's got an office. She has a place she can go get online. She can go to the kitchen. She can meet other businesses. In fact, we just hired a very strategic person based on her being in one of those random cities, looking up and saying, oh, there's a headhunting business in our industry. Let's go find somebody. We just found an amazing person through this exact thing. So it is a changing world, and think about ways that you can just not provide a roof over someone's head, but even a bigger picture, because if you can figure that out, they will be more loyal. They will do more business with you. There's other profit centers involved. I mean, you just got to think differently.
Well, so there's an opportunity, for example, to, repurpose an old property and configure it to be able to do something like this, where the bottom is one of these areas where people can get together socially, because these nomadic workers, especially people who, isolated workers, home-based workers, they have a social problem. They don't have a social life. There's nobody there.
Yep, there's already a solution for that. It's called Starbucks.
Yeah, well, that's where you find a lot of these folks,
Yeah.
And Starbucks created a business model recognizing the need, and people would pay a lot more for a cup of coffee because they got internet and they got a place to come hang out. And you think, well, that's so inefficient because, most of the time restaurants are all about the turn, but the turn's at the counter.
Yeah.
The turn isn't in the seats. And so they create these environments, and you'd say, well, gee, that's excessive, but it seems to work for them. So again, it's changing the rules of the way things used to be. There's new opportunities and challenges posed. And again, just always looking for how can I find a way to create that opportunity.
The last disruption I had on my list was cryptocurrency. We kind of talked about all that already. I'll just say this, having come back from that conference we ran a couple weeks ago, is that there are more than 2,000 cryptocurrencies right now. And there's 800 that we saw on a list. And we met folks who were from number 45.
Yeah.
A friend of ours is starting a cryptocurrency backed by gold. I mean, it's a changing area. So there's so many things to think about. Your mission as a real estate investor is not to get complacent. We did Clues in the News last week. We're looking at what the news says. We're talking about disruption in real estate. That's important. Coming up, we're going to be talking about how do we navigate what could be difficult waters, right? Do you change the way you invest if you think a cloud is on the horizon? So we're always evolving as real estate investors. You want to continue to do what's working well for you, and then you want to expand and change and outthink your competitor when we look at these changes. So next week on the show, it's going to be another amazing show. In the meantime, go out and make some equity happen.
This episode of the Real Estate Guys radio show is brought to you by Paradigm Life. Powerful cash management strategies using life insurance. Learn more at beyourbank.com. Mid-South Home Buyers. Low-cost, turnkey cash flow properties in Memphis, Tennessee. Corporate Direct. Asset protection strategies for real estate investors. From attorney and Rich Dad advisor Garrett Sutton. Find these and other great companies under the Resources tab at realestateguysradio.com. To learn how you can expose your product or service to the Real Estate Guys audience, call 888-489-7723 extension 4. That's 888-489-7723 extension 4. Or use the feedback page at realestateguysradio.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week right here on the Real Estate Guys Radio Show.